Welcome back to the Campfire Series podcast. Today is Thursday, September 24th, 2020, and I am your host, Logan Soforenko. Still going strong, almost 5 months on this podcast. Appreciate the support. We have a very special guest joining us this week on this week's theater episode, directly from the Broadway National Tour of Mean Girls, the musical. Please welcome Grace Romanello.
Hi, I'm Romanello. I'm a swing in the first national tour of Mean Girls. Rhode Island originally. I moved to New York after I had done a couple cruise contracts when I turned 18. So then when I was about 20, I moved to New York City, started auditioning, and I was 20 when I started the Mean Girls tour. I'm now 21, and this pandemic has made everything a little bit crazy, but I'm excited to get back on the road, hopefully soon.
You mentioned your time on cruise ships and contracts and stuff. Did that play into the casting process for Mean Girls at all?
I don't know if it played into the casting process for Mean Girls, but I think working on cruise ships definitely prepared me personally to go on tour, because they're both very crazy lifestyles. So I think it definitely got me ready for the audition process, for touring, for all that.
What did you do on cruise ships?
So I worked for a Norwegian cruise line when I turned 18, and I was a singer. And then pretty soon after that, I did 3 contracts with them. One of them was a rehearsal swing position, so that could have been part of why I'm now a swing on Mean Girls. And then I was a singer, and then I did a replacement contract. And then after that, I went over to Royal Caribbean, where I played Cha-Cha in Greece, and I understudied Rizzo. And I did that for a year. That was an about 11 and a half month contract. And then within 6 months, I was rehearsing for Mean Girls.
College training or high school training? What was that journey like?
So I had kind of a weird journey. So I didn't go to college. I'll start by saying that I did not, go to college for musical theater or anything like that. But it's kind of been in my family. So I grew up around a lot of musical theater. My parents actually met doing a show. So everyone in my family is kind of involved. I grew up listening to show tunes and jazz and all that. So it was always kind of a part of me. I did my first show when I was 7. And I played Tiny Tim in A Christmas Carol at like a local theater. And then after that, it kind of just kept going, and I kept, auditioning. And then I started auditioning for Broadway shows, given they were just, open calls, and I was a little girl thinking I knew what I was doing. But yeah, and then eventually I started dancing competitively. So that was, I was pretty much a late bloomer for dance. I started when I was 10, and I started with tap. So I tapped for a year, and then I switched over to ballet and modern, lyric, contemporary, all that stuff. I competed for about 6 years, and then I did a couple high school shows. No major training in high school, but just, voice lessons and acting classes, a lot of dance on the side. So that was kind of where I got all of my training.
Walk me through the audition process for Mean Girls and that whole journey with the creative team. And obviously, I'm sure you went through a couple rounds of auditions. Tell us a little bit about that.
It was crazy. It was such a different audition process than what I was used to. And it was definitely a lot longer because it was a first national tour. It was a lot of auditioning. So I went to my first audition. I want to say it was maybe February of last year, or maybe even January. Um, and oh no, it had to be maybe March. So I lied. It's about March. I went to my first audition, and that was for the singer EPA. And I went in kind of, not really knowing where they would put me, but I kind of went in with like a Janice vibe in mind. So I auditioned for that, and I heard nothing. The next week they had the singer ECC, the equity chorus call, or no, the dancer equity chorus call. And that was crazy packed. There were like 600 girls there that day, and they had more than one day. But that was just one of them. They had roughly I was number like 550. So there had to be at least 600. And we went in huge groups. We did a part of Fearless and a part of Whose House Is This? which is kind of Fearless was more of the technique, and Whose House was more of the hip hop Casey Nicholaw vibe. So we did that, and then the next day I was going to go to the Singer ECC, but my agent called me and was like, "You got a call back from the dancer call." So I didn't go to the Singer ECC because I already had the call back. And then 2 days later, I went into Telsey, the casting agency. I went in and sang for them. I sang just a song that I chose from my book, a pop rock song. I think it was by Paramore. And then I got an email the next day, I think, to go back in again to dance again. And then I got called in for an understudy position, possibly for the Broadway show as the Regina or possible Katie cover. So I sang Regina and Katie's stuff. And then that same day, I got another email to then sing for Janice and Gretchen. And then they added Karen later on, but then I danced again. And then they called me in for a swing for the Broadway show. So I ended up going to, I think, 9 auditions total. It was like 9 callbacks, switching back and forth between the tour and Broadway. And eventually I booked a swing in the tour.
You mentioned your agent called you. How did you sign with an agent, and how do you think having an agent in New York differentiates from actors that are going without an agent, just going into open calls? What are some advantages, and tell us a little bit about how you sign with an agent.
Sure. So I'm pretty new to the whole agent manager thing. I only just got one right before Mean Girls started, actually. Or maybe it was like halfway through the process, but he was a friend, like a friend's agent. And they're very close. They have a really good relationship. And my friend said, I think you should, reach out to him. I can reach out to him beforehand, and let him know that you're interested, but I want to send him your stuff. And my friend actually is the one who helped me sign with him. So I give him all the credit for that. But yeah, I think the biggest thing that I noticed was getting in the room. There are so many, agent only or manager only appointment slots that you can only get if you have an agent, vouching for you. And so that was something I had maybe like 5 or 6 auditions that I only would have gotten through my manager. So I'm very grateful that I had that at the time. And then also with negotiating, it makes it a lot easier, especially as someone, who's kind of newer to that. It helps having someone on your side and backing you and being there to stand up for you in those situations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that right now, especially in quarantine, a lot of us are trying to get together our books and find any sort of tape we can get. I think that's kind of, what the heck's going to happen with theater. Is it going to be, on self tapes, or it's going to be crazy? But you mentioned Telsey. Telsey's a pretty big casting agency in New York. A lot of shows, they cast a lot of shows. What was the thought process walking into Telsey?
That was one of the scariest auditions of my life. Because you hear about Telsey and all these bigger agencies, and I had never auditioned in their actual building. I had, been in front of Bethany Knox, who was the head for Mean Girls. I had auditioned for her before. I doubt she remembered me because it was just like, a busy day of whatever the audition was. But then when it came time for Mean Girls, I was like, okay, I've been in front of her, but something about going into the building itself was so scary. And I felt like there was a kind of a pressure because it was a callback. And it ended up going really well. I mean, obviously, which is great, but it was such a surreal moment, and it kind of made it feel real because I was so used to, whether it was Ripley Greer or Pearl Studios, those were kind of the home bases for auditions. And then all of a sudden I was like in Telsey, and I was like, oh my gosh.
You said you've been in 8 or 9 plus rounds of auditions for Mean Girls. How hard is it to get cast in a Broadway production or a Broadway tour?
Oof, I wish I knew more like numbers because I don't know. It's It's so crazy, and there's so much that goes into it. I would love to actually sit behind the table for a show like Mean Girls and just see, in the audition room and throughout the process how they go about things, because there's so much that goes into it, filling these roles, and especially a show like Mean Girls where, acting, singing, dancing, it's not just like, oh, you got to be good at one. Given all shows, you got to be good at all of them, but it's such a dance heavy show too, and everyone is singing all the time, so there's so much that goes into it. I don't even know how they do it.
Well, congratulations! You've been touring for a while now, and we're so sorry about the pandemic. Obviously, not just shutting down the world, but also shutting down theater. And you know, we don't know when it's going to come back. But with that being said, when you joined the company and you started your rehearsal process, walk me through it. What was it like?
Being a swing in rehearsals is very different. And again, I had been a rehearsal swing for one of the cruise ships, but that was like a 6 week process, which is really long. So everything was kind of spread out. This was within 2 weeks, and I was only covering 3 parts at that point, and now I cover 8. So it was learning 8 parts in 2 weeks for a show that's very, very dance heavy. And the traffic is chaotic. So in the morning, I would go in, I would make sure I had a lot of caffeine ready to go. And I would go in, sign in, and we had a little swing station actually. So in the front of the room, kind of with the creatives. So with Casey Nicholaw and Nell Benjamin, who wrote the lyrics, she was there a lot. Tina was in and out. Tina Fey was in and out. So it was, we were kind of just right there with them, and we would watch and we would be taking notes. We would do track sheets and charts. So the charts are like, you have what's the word I'm looking for? Like the chart, I guess, of the stage, and you fill in the numbers of whichever person is where, and then you can write arrows to where they go. So it's more of a visual cue, whereas the track sheets are writing out, this person goes to this number and then moves over to this number. So it's a different approach, but the same kind of idea. So we did both. And then usually I keep my track sheets with me backstage because they're just easier to follow than the charts. And it's easier to keep extra notes on them and whatnot. But we would be writing those out. Every now and then we would step in. People were kind of in and out for different things, whether it was, fittings or physical therapy or doing a different scene. We had people kind of in and out of the room, so the swings would step in whenever someone would leave. And it was always the scariest moment because you're like, I don't know who they could be throwing me in for right now. And it's like, what if you don't know it? What if you're not ready? Because you're learning a lot, But it was overall probably the most I've learned in a long, long time as a performer was rehearsals for this show.
How many tracks do you cover in the tour?
I cover 8 different tracks. So all of the female ensemble girls, I do all 8 of those parts.
How often do you go on? And forgive me if I don't know if you're in the backstage waiting or how often do you go on? Tell me a little bit about that and that whole process.
I'll tell you about it. So it varies, and it depends on the week. It depends on the day. So there are weeks where I was on, I think the most I've done a week is 6 shows, or no, well, I've done a full week of 8 shows, but only as one person. And then I've done maybe five different tracks in one week. So every night I was basically a different person, which was actually a lot of fun. And it was a good thing that it was a little bit later on, so I had time to adjust. And I had done all the parts before at that point, which is good. I wasn't like debuting any new parts, which can be scary, especially when you're doing a different part the day before. But it can vary. Usually we do like 4 shows a week, and more often than not, it's as at least one different, like 2 different people. It's usually more than one, but it depends because we have a lot of it. The show is very female heavy too. So we have a lot of female leads. And if any of them are out, someone from the ensemble steps in and a swing steps into their part. And that tends to happen a lot too. So there's a lot of just opportunity for someone to not be there because of how many females we have. And me and the other female swing, we kind of we got to be ready to step in when we can. But we have backstage for every performance. The female swings, the males, and the female standby are all backstage for every show. We get there the same time as the cast, and we have the monitors on. We're, either rehearsing certain parts or updating track sheets, or we watch the show, or we track someone backstage. And sometimes if we're feeling either super confident with where we're at, or we want just like a little break, we'll just chill, listen to music for a while, we'll talk, hang out. But more often than not, we're on, the show, because there's so much to do always. And then there was one more thing I wanted to say about it, but I can't really remember. What was it? Oh, and we could know weeks before that we're going in, even months before, if someone has a planned vacation, something like that. But we can also find out, right before the show or halfway through the show. And that's happened a couple times too. So you just gotta be ready.
What's been the reception that you guys have gotten as a company from the fan base? Because I know that obviously Mean Girls is a very, very, very big movie. It's a big deal. Aaron Samuels from the movie, Jonathan Bennett hosted our High School Musical Theater Award show last year, and all the girls were going crazy. So, what was the reception that you guys got when you had opening night and throughout your run?
It's been so, so good. Obviously, different cities, you'll get different reactions, but that's what's really cool about touring, is you get such a different crowd of people from parts of the country, and you kind of get to see what each city is like and what the people are like. And, a joke will be amazing in one city, and then the next city it doesn't really land as much, but it's not a bad thing. It's just the different environment, and it's really cool. But overall, it's been we've gotten such a good reception from it. And people have been so, so sweet. Our fans are like the nicest people in the world. There are some fans that come to so many different cities, and it's so nice to see familiar face in a different part of the country. But it's been kind of unreal. I'm still adjusting.
How does it differentiate from the movie? Obviously, aside from the songs, of course, but how does it differentiate from the movie? Is it written more up to date? Well, how does it differentiate?
Yeah. So what's really cool that Tina Fey did was she took the 2004 movie, and it's such an iconic film, and it's one of arguably, or in my opinion, but arguably one of the most quotable movies of all time. So it's hard because she had to take this movie that everyone knows every line to, and she had to bring it to 2018 when it premiered on Broadway. She had to bring it to 2018 and make it make more sense for now, while still keeping some of the original lines that people want to hear, but not having the exact same movie just put on stage. And she did a really, really amazing thing by just balancing, certain lines that she kept, certain lines that she had the same general idea, but then updated or changed. And the way that she brought more technology into it was really smart. Obviously, we don't really do the three-way call anymore, where you can't see who's on the line. Like, you always know who you're talking to on the phone now. There was that scene in the movie where they have the three-way call that ends up being like a four-way call, and they don't know, and all that stuff. So that was something that had to be adjusted, and social media, texting, all that. So she did a really great job of bringing it, to more of a modern generation.
In casting, when you met Casey Nicholaw, what was that kind of reaction? Because obviously Casey Nicholaw, big name in musical theater. What was the reaction meeting him?
So I met him, I think it was maybe my fourth audition, third or fourth. And I remember I got the email from my agent, because I had been waiting at that point. It was like I had been through a couple callbacks, and I was like, I really want to know. I really want to know. And I saw in the breakdown of what the callback would be, it always said who was in the room. And in that one, it was the first one that said, in the room, Casey Nicholaw, director, choreographer. And I was like, I was with my cousins. I was like, I have to go. I have to get ready. Like, I'm freaking out. Casey Nicholaw is going to be there. I have to make sure that I really perform my best. it was a really crazy moment for me just to know that he was there, and then seeing him and interacting with him was unbelievable. And I said this from the beginning, it was one of the most welcoming creative teams that I've ever auditioned for, if not the greatest. Everyone was so sweet. They made you feel so comfortable in the room, and it was the same way in rehearsals and throughout the whole process. They were always so sweet, and they just wanted to make it feel like you were welcome there. Whereas sometimes you go into auditions and it's like a scary environment, and people are stressed or there's a lot of tension, but there was no tension. Everyone was so sweet. Casey, it was an angel in the audition room, so it was really great.
What have been some cities that you've enjoyed throughout touring?
There are certain cities that I liked the city itself, and then there were certain cities that the people were just so sweet, or the theater was beautiful. Um, Overall, I really I liked Minneapolis a lot because I turned 21 in Minneapolis, so it kind of holds a special place in my heart now. But I loved Philly. I had never been to Philly, even though I'm from the Northeast and it's not super far from me. But I had never been, so being in Philadelphia was really really cool. And then after that, Boston was awesome because it was kind of my home base at the time, because Providence is the theater that all the tourists come to in Rhode Island, but no one, like, it wasn't on our year one. So I was like, all right, the closest is Boston. So I had people in all the time, which was really, really great. And I got to go on a bunch of times in Boston too, which was lucky because, of course, you never really know if you're going in as a swing. So when people were like, oh, what day should I buy tickets for? I was like, I don't know what to tell you because I don't really know when I'm going to be in. But I had so much love in that city, so it was really special. And then we got to the warmer weather cities, which just made it really nice.
Counting down the days so y'all get to LA, that's for sure. But before we wrap up, what's some advice you can give to young performers? I guess you're not too far off in age to many college performers and musical theater programs, and as well as high schoolers as well. What is some advice you can give to those kind of performers?
I feel like any advice I give is going to be kind of the same stuff you always hear, but really just keep working on your craft. It's not about, being the best at anything. It's about being well-rounded and versatile as a performer. You want to be able to adjust and adapt. That's the more, performance side. But then also just be humble and be so open-minded that it's like the whole world is you're ready for anything, um, because you have to be able to adjust. So it's really important to just keep your mind open.
What is Mean Girls this experience thus far? And obviously, being in a company during a pandemic, what has this meant to you personally?
I mean, it's been such a special thing for me for a long time. I saw it 2 years ago, I guess, in New York with my friend. And right when the show ended, I looked at her and I said, I'm booking this show this year. And then I booked it within 3 months. And I worked so hard. I learned everything. So it's been really important to me. And the fact that I not only, have a great job, but the fact that it's a show that I love has meant everything. And as a swing, I could not ask for anything more. I love to learn. I love using my brain. And so it's a great way to keep your mind sharp, and it keeps things interesting and fun. So I'm so unbelievably grateful to be able to do what I love to do.
Well, that just sounds so amazing, and we're hoping that everything gets back as quick as possible. But in the meantime, thank you so much for coming on. I wish I could, talk to you for hours, but stay safe and just stay positive, and I'll definitely let you know when this episode drops. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. This was so much fun. I'm so glad I got to do this.
Thank you again. I can say thank you a million times. I really am thankful. So thank you for coming on and talking about the tour. I can't wait to see you guys at the Pantages next year.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Well, you have a good one. It was nice meeting you.
Thank you. It was so nice to meet you too.
All right, bye bye.
Bye.